chess. Many years ago, there lived in India a rich and powerful king. The king dearly loved his son, who was a great warrior. But one day, his son died in a terrible battle. The king was so sad, he locked himself in his room and wouldn't come out. All the wise men in the kingdom tried to cure the king of his sadness. But all to no avail. Until one day there came a wise man from a faraway land who invented the game of chaturanga for the king. The game was played on a board with 64 black and white squares on which two armies moved as though on a battlefield. Each army had 8 pawns, soldiers who could only advance, never retreat. They had 2 castles, which could wipe out anything in their path. 2 knights, who could jump over enemy lines. 2 bishops, ministers of the king, who protected the diagonal lines of the board. A queen, the most dangerous piece, who could move in any direction. And finally, the king, who all the others were trying to defend. When the king learned how to play the game, he wanted to recreate the battle in which his son had died. He realized that the only way to save the king was by sacrificing his most prized piece, his son. The king wanted to reward the wise man for having cured him of his sadness, and he offered him anything he wanted: gold, jewels, power. But the wise man said, "Give me 1 grain of wheat for the first square on the board, then double that on the second, and so on, until you reach the last square. That'll be my reward." The king laughed at this, but when he tried to add up the grains of wheat as the wise man said, he realized it would end up being a mountain of wheat as big as planet Earth itself. The wise man thus showed the king that chess and maths are very closely related. The Arabs brought chess from Asia to Europe through Spain. During the 16th and 17th centuries, important changes were made to the rules. The game centers on finishing off the king of the opposing side. When you're going to kill the opposing king, you say checkmate, which comes from the Persian Shah Mat, or the king is dead. Chess is a game of strategy where the opponents test their intelligence in combats of which no two are ever the same. Billions of strategies are possible, and victory never depends on luck, but on the intelligence of the player.